Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to come and speak about Helium and Helium Mobile and Helium 5G. I am the Vice President of Business Development for a company called Nova Labs. If Nova Labs does not sound familiar, it's because we used to be called Helium Systems Incorporated, but we were the founding member of the Helium network. I just want to say first and foremost, thank you to Multicoin for having us. This is particularly special for the Nova team because it actually feels a lot like when we first launched the Helium network with the IoT network. We were launching a token incentivized infrastructure in a bear market, and we just sort of went for it. And the Multicoin team and this group here, I mean, I'm looking at people like Derek, for example. Hey, Derek, who's a very early deployer of Helium hotspots. I guess, does anybody else deploy hotspots here? Yeah, give yourselves a round of applause because you helped us get this whole thing off the ground. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Helium 5G and mobile. So I'm going to elide over a lot of details that are sort of fundamental to the Helium network as it exists today and sort of how the mechanics work. Again, if you have questions, let's talk about it in the back. But in the interest of time, we're going to try and keep it simple. The Helium community decided, and this was sort of messaged in the white paper, if people have read that from about 3 years ago, that the incentive mechanism that we sort of pioneered should be usable for other networks besides devices and sensors. And so about a year ago, there was a proposal put forth by a group that suggested that we should take the Helium incentive mechanism and turn it into something that could be used for other wireless protocols. And so the first wireless protocol, in addition to IoT, is something that's called Helium 5G, or specifically the Helium 5G subdial. Again, we're not going to get super deep into the 5G subdial details in this talk. We can talk about it afterwards. But suffice it to say, we are adapting the Helium incentive mechanism to support another wireless protocol. So today, we're doing hundreds of millions of packets a month from devices and sensors, so mousetraps and temperature sensors and weather stations. I was on a great panel yesterday with a company called Hivemapper and another company called PlanetWatch, and Hivemapper makes a dash cam that uses the Helium network to sort of triangulate and trust their data better. And PlanetWatch is crowdsourcing highly accurate and very usable weather data and also uses the Helium network for connectivity there. 5G is different, right? So this is made for much bigger data. And everyone here has a phone, right? I don't have to get the crowd to show your phones, but everyone here has a phone, right? And so the idea is that the Helium 5G network can exist to facilitate data transfer from anything with a SIM card, physical SIM or an eSIM, and do it in such a way that builds on the economics in the Helium blockchain, which is using HNT to fund transactions on the blockchain. There is a new token for the mobile network called Mobile. So Mobile is one of two new tokens that we've introduced via what's called HIP51. And again, we can talk about that after the talk. It's much longer. The Mobile token is a governance token for the 5G subDAO. But again, the takeaway here is that HNT remains the base layer utility token. At some point in this room, I'd be willing to wager that a lot of people here will have a phone that uses the Helium network. And when that happens, HNT gets burned out of the ecosystem and data credits are used to pay for that traffic. So let's take a quick look at what it actually looks like to deploy this. Does anybody have one of these? I talked to a few people already. Who's got I mean, I know Derek, because he just goes for it. Anybody in the back? There we go. OK, a few, right? So these are pictures of deployments on the Helium network. Let's see if we can get this to work. So this is a house that has two what are called BiCells 430H radios. We have some of these models in the back people can come look at. And then these, I included these because these are from people that have deployed these in the New York, New Jersey area. This is a little bit grainy, but if you look far enough in the back, you can see New York City, right? So this one is in, I think, somewhere in New Jersey. And there's a river in there, as you guys all know. And so these are providing 5G coverage to handsets that can actually use the Helium network. And every one of you here should consider becoming part of the Helium network. Like I said before, the group here at Multicoin was very instrumental in getting us off the ground early on. And this feels a lot like it did back then. So how big is the network? So you can go to explorer.helium.com, and you can see all the data in real time. On the left here, we have the national coverage, and as you can see, it's quite sparse. And again, if you remember 2.5, 3 years ago, when we first got this thing started, we just had the 30th anniversary of the network launch. When we first started, it was very sparse, right? Someone started in a single city, they started to deploy coverage, and it sort of grew out from there. 5G is very much going to be the same thing. I've included a look at New York. So again, much like with the IoT and LoRaWAN network, we had major metropolitan hubs sort of be the start of where the coverage growth happened. This is a higher up view of the 5G coverage in New York. If I were to ballpark it, we'll call it, I don't know, 100-ish. Right, give or take. We've got, these stats are actually out of date already. There's closer to 4,200 radios that have been onboarded to the Helium 5G network, up from about, I want to say 28 or 2,900 just 30 days ago, and the 30 days before that it was at about 1,000. So the coverage is ramping up very quickly. As I mentioned before, so when you deploy the Helium 5G network, you earn a token called Mobile. It's a governance token for the 5G subDAO itself. The Mobile token went live via Genesis mining on August 12th of this year. So it's only been live for just under a month. And whoever raised their hand, I saw somebody in the back there. So you're earning Mobile tokens as part of this Genesis mining period. I'm happy to talk specifically about what that means, but suffice it to say, every day during this Genesis mining period, 100 million Mobile tokens are split across all the radios. And there's some weighting based on the type of radio that you have, but suffice it to say, if you have a radio online today and you're providing raw coverage, you're being rewarded with a pretty significant amount of Mobile tokens. When we move through the Genesis period, which will be a month, maybe 2 months, and we have the HIP 53 fully implemented. So HIP 53 is the 5G subDAO, and this basically gives the full sort of mechanics for how the 5G network is supposed to operate. We'll then move into a period where you're rewarded for a series of different incentives. So things like providing actual coverage, which we're doing now. A lot of the weight is given to actual data transfer from phones. We're building this network so that people with handsets can actually use this and rely on it as a carrier and something that helps them send data and do FaceTime calls with their parents, right? Or send messages to their kids who are at college. And briefly, when you earn Mobile, you always have the ability to essentially swap it for HNT inside what's called the 5G subDAO treasury. And this is, again, a much longer conversation, but suffice it to say, back to my friend here who's mining Mobile in the back, when HIP 53 is fully implemented, you will be at any time able to take your Mobile and swap it for HNT at a rate that the subDAO advertises. It's easiest to think of the subDAO as the buyer of last resort, essentially, for Mobile at all times. People here should be deploying the Helium 5G network. As I mentioned before, there's 4,200 hotspots that are offering 5G coverage. You can go to the back and look at a few different models. We've got an outdoor model, an outdoor high-powered model. We can walk you through the entire deployment. I can put you together with somebody who's already deployed these, and they can give you a perspective on actually how it works and how they think they might use it. When you deploy 5G gateways, you're mining the Mobile token. This is the subDAO governance token that's always swappable for HNT. And then lastly, and we didn't talk about this too much, but again, the intention here is to build a network that lets you connect devices to it. Anything with a SIM card or an eSIM that uses the right carrier should be able to access the Helium network, and ultimately, we think we can drive a massive amount of usage through this network that's built by people that gives you a use case that is very real and tangible. It's your phone connecting to a decentralized crypto-based network. We think this is going to be massive.